I want you to write down something very essential and important about Robert Pinsky. So I'm about to share the screen. Okay, so this is the poem that we are about to do today, which is called Shirt by Robert Pinsky. So who was Robert Pinsky? Let's just get started with some of the basic facts. The poem Shirt by Robert Pinsky was written at the time when there was great fire caught back in London, and there were some of the people in the high authority who claimed and who challenged the responsibility of the owners. So we are going to look at Shirt poem in the historical background. This was first appeared in the pages of the New Yorker in 1989. This was very first time it appeared in 1989. In it, the speaker, that is Robert Pinsky, he merges the descriptions of garment. He merges the descriptions of garment manufacturing with the social and personal histories of the worker. With the social and personal histories of the workers, who create the items which the poet or us represented as readers, whom the products that we buy and we wear. So it has a very mechanical rhythm that depicts the long hours of the work at the factory. This factory was named as Triangle Factory. I repeat, it was named as Triangle Factory. He was an American poet, an essayist, and literary critic. Also, he was contributing a lot to the translation. There was something important that was happening in his career, and that was about it's important to learn about how and why he came up to writing this poem. So basically, Pinsky is the author to 19 books in total, which are a collection of his poetry. From 1997 till 2000, 1997 till 2000, he served as poet laureate, consultant in poetry, poet laureate, consultant in poetry to the Library of Congress. He was born in October 20th and 1940, so that means that he's like around 80 years old. And what influenced his work, what influenced his poetry? What Robert Frost, one of the romantic poets, Robert Frost, T.S. Eliot, Elizabeth Bishop, all have been, happen to be 17th and the 18th century poets. This is my personal favorite because, he's known for so many things that he contributed, but what is this Shirt poem about? So he's basically trying to ask the readers to look at some of the common objects that have been taken for granted by people. You and I, we all wear garments, but have we ever thought about as a whole, process that can be so painful? And he's eliciting through his various thoughts in the poem. Let's just get started with the poem reading. We'll read the first three stanzas. The back, the yoke, the yardage. These are the three different types of the stitches in a shirt, in a dress shirt. So I'm right over here. Let me use my pen. I have given you an introduction to the poet himself, Robert Pinsky. The back, the yoke. So it starts with a list-like impression. It starts with a list-like, the back, the yard, the yoke, the yardage, lapped seams, the nearly invisible stitches along the collar turned in a sweatshop by Koreans or Malaysians gossiping over tea and noodles on the break or talking money or politics while one fitted. Why am I speeding up? Because if you see right from here, you've got the run-on lines. There is no space, you see? It says what? What do we call this? We call this Enjambment, because that shows the tedious, the mundane, the monotony of the work. It's consistent. I mean, they have no break. They have to keep on going and going, and the stitch has to be done in the really straight line, and then would be taking a turn, and then so it's unbroken. It's basically not detached. It's a continuous process of their hard work, the hard effort that they put in. So again, whom are we talking about? Who are these workers at the factory? They are no one else but Koreans and Malaysians, and they're gossiping over tea and noodles on their break, or talking money because financial crisis or politics. One of the things that are, as in like the highlight, what exactly, the topic of the discussion could be about the surroundings. This arm piece with its overseam to the band. To the band of cuff I button at my wrist, and therefore it stops. The moment you button up at your wrist, that means you have finally worn it, right? And you are like, it's a finality. This full stop is giving you a sense of finality. This gives you a sense of finality. So it is very, it gives you a strong sense of an urgency in which the process takes place, sense of an urgency to complete their designated task, their assigned, or let's say imposed, their force for this work imposed task. Off cuff, I button at my wrist. So this is a personal narration because it makes use of my, that is possessive pronoun. It is first person pronoun, I. So it begins with the third person omniscient narration. It begins with the third person because, he's giving you a visual depiction of the shirt and the workers making the product and giving it a final outlook. So it's omniscient narration that is indicated by a holistic environment that has been depicted over here. It almost gives an idea that they are captivated by their own helplessness. So off cuff, I button at my wrist. So, and then right from the third stanza, he switches to the point of view, POV. This point of view is what? Is first person pronoun. So we are going to call it intrinsic narration. Intrinsic narration. Intrinsic narration, first person. The presser, the cutter, the wringer, the mangle, the needle, the union, the treadle, the bobbin, the cord, the infamous blaze at the triangle factory in 1911. With all of the items which are required, if you notice, I need to just remove this so that you can be able to see it very closely and clearly. The point of view we talked about it starts with a list-like effect, and the same thing is happening with the crispness of the items which are being counted. So the presser, the cutter, the wringer, the mangle, the needle, all of these things are required to make a shirt, the bobbin, the cord, and then suddenly what happens? There's a sudden shift, and he takes us back to 911, where at the triangle factory, all of these workers were burned down to their death, or they fell down from the windows to their death. The infamous, it's a negative charged word, infamous, something devastating that happened. And it's a blaze at the triangle factory. So we have been launched into the setting of an incident. You will feel that at times as if you're have been traveling back in time, and it's a historical background that has been given over here, but it talks a lot about the people, how they were manipulative. At the triangle factory in 1911, 146 died in the flames on the 9th floor, no hydrants, no fire escapes, and there is a strong caesura. there is a strong caesura. Why? Why there is a strong caesura? Why do we have it? What about this strong caesura? So we're talking about the facts, all right? This is stanza, which is divided only into 3 lines, like 3 lines per stanza. That gives us rapidity of action, how quickly the fire spread and caught everyone. It's in its own spell, and they were burned down to, burned down to their death. So rapidity of action is depicted by the preciseness of the stanzas. The caesura is definitely no fire escape. It gives you claustrophobic, choking impact because no hydrants. These are the 2 negative expressions, right? Negations. No, the repetition emphasizes that how they were trapped and their screams were not being heard and there were no fire escape. So this is a comment on the owners of the factory. They never thought about the well-being of the workers or to give them any right, except they thought about their own manufacturing of the shirt or their own finishing of the item. So it's a factual detail that has been given. So now I stop here and I want you to listen to Robert Pinsky himself. How do you think he's reading? Let's listen in his own voice the poem so that we are able to even make more sense. So let me just share the screen. Laiba, any impressions about this poem? Any impression about the poem which you may think could be taken account of? Any one of your comments would you like to share? Let us just listen, and we are right over here. Okay, I hope the screen is clear, right? Now let's look at Robert Pinsky himself and how is he reading. Is it audible? Can you write in the chat box? Is it audible? Okay.
Shirt, the back, the yoke, the yardage, lapped seams, the nearly invisible stitches along the collar turned in a sweatshop by Koreans or Malaysians, gossiping over tea and noodles on their break, or talking money or politics, while one fitted this arm piece with its overseam to the band of cuff I button at my wrist. The presser, the cutter, the ringer, the mangle, the needle, the union, the treadle, the bobbin, the code, the infamous blaze at the Triangle Factory in 1911. 146 died in the flames on the 9th floor. No hydrants, no fire escapes. The witness in a building across the street who watched how a young man helped a girl to step up to the windowsill, then held her out.
Now, this was so important. This is in the middle of the action, the climax of the poem, when he says that the man was stretching out his hand in order to help one of the female workers over there, and she wanted to just jump off, but not realizing that she is going to not land in the car which has been just parked under that 9th floor, right in the street, open street, and people were witnessing this great horrific the fire accident. We call it fire accident, but again, it is emphasizing so much upon the details. It's visual also. Have a look at the rapidity of the action.
Away from the masonry wall and let her drop. And then another, as if he were helping them up to enter a streetcar and not eternity. A third before he dropped.
The eternity which he talked about. What is this eternity? This eternity is life after death. And she was thinking that I may be, jumping off the 9th floor and I may land into the streetcar. But it was even petrifying to notice that how they just fell and there was nobody to help them.
Her put her arms around his neck and kissed him. Then he held her into space and dropped her. Almost at once, he stepped to the sill himself. His jacket flared and fluttered up from his shirt as he came down, air filling up the legs of his gray trousers.
Air filling up the legs of his gray trouser. What is this? This is the moment, in that, if you notice that the poet is making a combination between the fast lines, as in like the momentum of the, in the beginning, it's quite fast because they are required to do the work. And now he's like steadily slowing down the depiction of the portrayal of falling of one of the male workers at the factory. And that shows how dramatically intense, and as if he remembers it from yesterday. So this is again like, it's kind of like a murder. And that's what the bigger message that he wants to communicate to the rest of the other people.
Like Hart Crane's Bedlamite, shrill shirt ballooning. Wonderful how the pattern matches perfectly across the placket and over the twin bar-tacked corners of both pockets, like a strict rhyme or a major chord. Prints, plaids, checks, houndstooth, tattersall, madras. The clan tartans invented by mill owners inspired by the hoax of Ashen to control their savage Scottish workers.
I will just stop right over here because we are almost like half the way. We have reached the poem, and all we need to understand that how Robert thinks he is reading the poem himself. So if anyone has just joined me right now, I would request Liva to just guide a bit because I'm in the middle of the lesson. So I would be really thankful with that. So I'm going to go back to the screen, and I want to share with you where are we till now. So this is particularly being able to understand. Liba, you're there with me, right? So we need to understand that how the poet has been able to read and give us a very powerful visual imagery. One thing that I really, really want to emphasize of all these students who are analyzing this type of a poem, it has a strong socio-economic background, because 1911, when we're going back, that was just a start. 1914, we had the First World War, right? So already some of the incidents where people were not taken, they were not accountable for certain actions that they were making decisions. Capitalization was at its rise. The little factory owners who used to make manipulative, or let's say fake items in order to like give other brands names or copy other brands names, such were the let's say outlook of the owners of the Triangle factory. So what we need to realize over here is the idea that the Triangle factory in 1911, and then the factual details which have been given, but he keeps on using crisp expressions. The presser, the cutter, the wringer, the mangle, you see, all of this, the crisp expression. And then he switches to, you see, this was the part that we read, who watched how a young man helped a girl to step up to the windowsill, then held her out away from the masonry wall, the wall of the factory, and let her drop. And there drop, we have again a sense of finality, and that is dealing with the completion of their action, right? So the completion of the action is what? Let me just remove this part so that you're able to look at in great detail. Drop, symbolic of death. Again, let her drop. And then another, because it was ongoing and the conjunction is building up the momentum higher, that one after the other, the workers were falling, as if the conditional clause has been used. This is what we call with a conditional clause, showing a possibility. A conditional clause has been used as if he were helping them up to enter a streetcar and not eternity. So this deals with the struggle, the momentum, the movement between life and death. A third before he dropped her, a third before he dropped her, put her arms around his neck and kissed him. This must be, a couple maybe working at the factory. So it was absolutely like the last moment to just depart and be separated. Then he held her into space and dropped her almost. And he was not doing it deliberately. There was no other way out. So what if she can survive? This is basically, I repeat, someone who has right now joined me. This is written by Robert Finley, and this is the Great Fire, again, a fire accident that happened in 1911. So he is recording all the incidents, how the entire process took place. The minority belonged to multi-ethnic background. They were Koreans, they were Malaysians, but the owners did not think about their benefit. What if the fire, broke out? What if they are not able to be rescued? There is no hydrant, there is no escape. They simply locked the doors and let them burn. And how many slaves? I'm calling them slaves because they were treated like one. So how do you think that they are being able to, look at the servants? The servants were 140, and they all died. Some of them managed, and this was at ninth floor, so they could not, just run down. So ninth floor, jumping off, that was horrific. And they were trapped and dropped her. Please notice that we have the use of the past tense. The use of the past tense. The lexical field is related to what? What kind of vocabulary words have been used over here? Lexical field is related to what? To garments. There are certain expressions which have been used, but at the same time, there's so many. Lexical field is related to garments or attire, right? He stepped to the sill himself after all these ladies have been dropped. And then now it was his turn. Again, I'm repeating, this is called third person omniscient narration, as if he was an eyewitness to this accident. He was an eyewitness to this accident. Third person omniscient narration, all knowing. How do we know? This is third person singular pronoun has been used. He stepped to the sill himself. His jacket flared and fluttered up from his shirt. So if you notice, you have again. What kind of an expression is this? We call this alliteration. Flare and flutter. These are the soft consonant sounds that have been used. These are soft consonant sounds. May I request Liva to sit with Aliza so that you can share the poem? At least you have the poem in front of you. Okay. So flared and fluttered up from the shirt as he came down, air filling up the legs of his gray trousers. Gray is a color. It's a dull, and thing that was, indicative of prisoners in a jail or somewhat, because nothing was bright around them. They were trapped in their financial crisis, and they had no other idea to make money, just to work for certain people, and they took advantage of their financial concerns. Like heart cranes, bedlamite, shrill shirt ballooning. What is this simile? What is this simile about? Now let me show you how, right? I'm stopping over here. I'm going to show you the third part of our of our lesson, which is how you can write down your own analysis, how you can begin. So we are going to do it in three different sections. This is a bit of longer poem. Let me show you. It has, see, it's 3 line long. It matches the same. Yeah, we are remaining with um, 6, 7, 8. Yes, we are remaining with 8 more stanzas, and they are three-line long. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now, and I will be starting off with this idea, which is called. So you can mute the mic so that you can listen to me physically. You just turn on the screen and that way. Okay. So the first thing we did, we just realized what is this poem about? Why is this titled as Shirt? Shirt is symbolic of the fire accident back in 1911. He's not naming any particular owner. He's not naming any particular company's name. Nothing has been identified as such, but it's a whole, it's like making people realize empathy and to take account of the lower class or the working class. That's how things are going to move on. So I've stopped sharing the screen. I'm about to show you the answer. And for this, you may make changes the way you like. There is no hard and fast rule. All you need to do is to understand what goes in the first paragraph, the second paragraph, so that things are even clearer to you. The opening paragraph is usually about the context that we talk about. So let me just go to the document. It's just being uploaded. I'm almost there. Thank you for your patience. Yes, so we are right over here. Okay, so there you go. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom more. Okay. Robert Pinsky is one of America's foremost poet critics. I think this was my intro. I'm not saying that you should be writing down a simple block of biography. No, you have to connect with the title. Why? Why this turned out to be one of the award-winning poem, and often called the last of the civic or public poets. Shirt is one of his well-read poems, and it is about a great fire accident in 1911. In the poem, Pinsky goes through all the steps in the production of the shirt. The shirt is symbolic of the conditions. I wish this candidate must have written the poor conditions of workers in the sweat factory, shirt making factory, right? It symbolizes. Instead, this is a candidate's response, but I'm telling you, instead of repeating the term symbolic here and symbolic, you symbolizes, you can say it is an emblem. EMBLEM. I repeat, EMBLEM. That would be an emblem, another word for, use synonyms, avoid repetition. The vanity and materialism that people admire, especially without understanding the circumstances in which the materials were made. In this case, the shirt. How much they have struggled. This poem asks the reader, see, this is the context. You're not telling me about who is this poet, but we are looking at how this contextual information is interlinked. Okay, so the second paragraph says, it asks the reader to look at items that are commonly taken for granted, not just as objects, but as the product of material. Lives, work, history, and design. And he has used all of these elements as a concoction, as a culmination of his poem, like he's introducing us to the historical incident. Number one, the work, the process, the lives of such people. It was only limited to gossip over having a cup of tea or having some noodles because they were Koreans. That says in the very first stanza, and the design, the collar, the cuff, that are the design parts. That even though these objects may seem to be extremely plain, what is so complex about making up a shirt? They seem to be quite plain and simple, but Pinsky believes that they're able to elicit various thoughts. The poem takes readers to the factory. We are going back to that episode where the shirt was made, describing the Malaysian and Korean workers. The poem pays tribute to the Malaysian and Korean workers in the Triangle Shirts factory, that they were rather martyred, you know. Yes, you have read a novel about, okay. I need to tell you, those who are watching or listening, maybe later after this lesson, I have Aliza with me, and she has a comment. She says that, yes, yes, it is a real life experience. Yes. Can you turn on your mic? Can you share the same idea? It would be so great for others to understand because they can only listen to me.
um, we read the novel in, like, I think so, grade 5. The Locket. It was about two sisters who worked in that factory, and her sister, the elder sister, she was also killed in this fire. In this, it was a Triangle Shirtwaist factory. But I don't know if it's the same factory, but it was like the same scenario happened in that too.
And it doesn't mention. I think Triangle Factory was only the one. Can you listen to my voice back? Thank you. So yes, Triangle Factory fire accident was only once it happened. So you have got the running theme. Please give that reference over here. Please quote that reference of the novel. That shows, because as a literature student and taken as a primary subject, you need to understand that the more the various interpretations, but again, relevancy is going to be, it should not be far-fetched because it has the same concern that was being addressed. So thank you, Lisa. It was really nice to know that you already have read something which matches our theme for today. So what should be the theme? What should be the theme? What should be the theme? Think about it. I'm going to go through one more paragraph, and I would really request you to think about the theme. It's an accident. Workers have died, and he's paying tribute to all these workers. But at the same time, he's bringing out a great message, a bigger message, looking at the bigger picture. So shirt is a free verse. Nothing is rhyming. With 48 lines, the lack of rhyming scheme resonates with the chaos caused due to the fire and allows Pinsky to not worry about rhyming and just get his message across. The isolated noun phrases, nouns are what? At the start of the poem, the back of the shirt, the yoke, the yardage, the two different types of stitches, lap seams, all of this displays the shirt's features. Now, these features again show that how hardworking the people were at the factory, how expert they were in their own field. The use of factory terminology such as the wringer, the mangle, the needle, the union, it all play a vital role in bringing out the setting, the place, and the mood of the poem. Now, this student has not mentioned what type of the setting and what mood of the poem. Mood is the atmosphere. So what is the atmosphere? Can anyone tell me? You may write in the chat box. You may unmute yourself. What should be the mood, the atmosphere like? Suppressive, oppressive, suffocating. It's bound, right? They're bound to their routine. And setting is a very, let's say, compressed, or let's say very cramped place where they have to sit consistently and work for. Yes, it's like just definitely being trapped. The poem is written as a series of 16 sections. So we've got 16 stanzas. We are looking at the style, the language, and the vocabulary. 16 sections of 3 lines each, in which Pinsky sways back and forth, just the stitches are being back and forth between the procedure of making a shirt and the triangle fire incident, because they were running back and forth in order to escape and they couldn't do anything. Now we are paying attention to the sound words. I would request you to please write it down wherever you come across g sound. I told you it's the glottal sound because it shows the struggle. It's not mentioned there, but please write it down. It's called a velar sound. Velar, velar sound. It's a difficult sound, not easily being pronounced, and it gives you an effect of someone who has been groaning in pain, complaining in pain, and that's how Pinsky's tone shifts from feeling, you know, sad about all of these workers turns out to be bitter, you know, at the reality, at the heartlessness, cold heartedness of the owners who did not take the account of this work. So I hope you do understand the basic idea, but this response is very good, except few slips here and there, and I really want you to modify on that. Now, the use of the sounds of the consonant in the language for the parts of the machine give the poem a hypnotizing effect. Hypnotizing as if you're being trapped into that making of the shirt and you cannot. Why? Because the workers were only focusing on the shirt. They did not have time except little break where they used to have noodles or drink tea. So it's under the spell of making material, right? Under the spell of meeting their financial sustainability. When he brings the reader back to the details of physical shirt, each time he changes his emphasis somewhat, slightly, visiting different aspects. What kind of? For example, visual imagery. Now, this student has written his imagery. His visual imagery is used to focus the reader's attention back on the shirt. So it switches from the physical shirt to the symbolic shirt. The factory is the shirt. Do you catch the irony? Reversal of expectation. It seems that as if he entered a sweatshirt, a sweatshop, and he wants to buy it. Shirt is a symbol of comfort, protection, comforting yourself. But over here, reading this poem and looking at shirt, what does it imply? It implies that a whole, entails a story that behind the shirt there is what? There's great, loss. There is a great loss. There is, um, let's say, there is murder. It's murder when you haven't thought about their privileges or even their rights. So when discussing the shirt, Pinsky's tone is delicate, ethereal because there's a lot of description and excuses. When describing the shirt, Pinsky will become more descriptive by increasing the amount of commas and adjectives. This will also result in an increased pace, the rapidity of the action, the fast pace, increased pace. It's not tightly punctuation. When there is chaos, when there is commotion in the factory, people are not pausing and thinking, oh, what I'm going to do. They just run for their lives. And when discussing the historical events, Pinsky's tone is dismal and somber. When discussing the historical events, will use periods sparingly, thus slowing down the the period of the duration in which they work, or perhaps he's coming down. There is a greater message that is being given over here. I want you to listen to the remaining part of the poem in which he says, now. This was the back in the time, 1911, where people were not given rights. But now we have a woman of color who happens to be the owner, and she comes for inspection. Time has changed. The rights for every class, every person who belongs to different race has an equal right. So this is the bigger message, that how the time has transition. So let's just listen to Robert Finn once more so that we have an idea. Do let me know whether you're able to listen to the sound or not. Okay. So I stopped right over here. Let me just play. But in order to play, I need to simply hold on. Let me just minimize the screen to play the button. Yes.
Aimed by a fabricated heraldry. McGregor, Bailey, McMartin, the kilt devised for workers to wear among the dusty clattering looms. Weavers, carders, spinners, the loader, the docker, the navvy, the planter, the picker, the sorter sweating at her machine in a litter of cotton as slaves in calico head rags sweated in fields. George Herbert, your descendant is a black lady in South Carolina. Her name is Irma, and she inspected my shirt.
South Carolina, the lady who inspected the quality of the clothes, her name is Irma, and she is an inspector. So now it's the moment of triumph that he's saying that the time has changed. Previously, all these, it does sound that it's somewhere he's dealing with racism. He's dealing with the idea of class differentiation, the discrepancy that was held because of the class, color, creed. So towards the end, to the later half, when you're reading the poem twice, you would be able to realize that how is he making a sense of final judgment over the society. Equality is the most important thing.
Its color and fit and feel and its clean smell have satisfied both her and me. We have called its cost and quality down to the buttons of simulated bone, the buttonholes, the sizing, the facing, the characters printed in black on neckband and tail,
The characters
shape,
which are
the
printed in
label,
black.
the labor, the color, the shade, the shirt.
The shade, the color, and he ends with the same title. I will share the link with you on WhatsApp as well. Please do listen to him when he's going through back again. It's definitely, it has a bit of longer stanzas, but only limited to three lines each. Overall, the basic idea is to communicate. Nothing remains forever the same. Times change, people change their thinking, their mentality, and that is how we believe now in a democratic system that gives equal rights to people. But he raises this important, serious issue to an extent that he talks about only the shirt. With that, he narrates the whole incident and then he brings us to the modern time, to the recent times, how this has now been a practice for the workers and the equal rights for the working class. He sounds more like a follower for Marxist. Marxist happens to be a sociologist, and he gave an idea that bourgeoisie, like when we talk about elite class, they have all the rights to climb the social ladder. But back in 1911, these small-sized companies or factories, they were held in the name of capitalization. Small businesses mushrooming up everywhere in London, and that's how he talks about it. It's definitely related to. One of my students asked me a question whether they were punished. The owners, they should have been arrested. So there, obviously, a person who is in power back in that time, it's a universal appeal. Corruption happens, and it does leave the person with a question: why do we need to suffer? So it's an imbalance that has been, discussed over here between the So please do listen to the class again. You have the booklet with you, and if not, Aliza is like, yeah, we're going to definitely collect it right now. So make sure that you do take account of the poem, and the already the entire analysis is there. But in the physical lesson, I will be redoing it. Thursday we have a quiz, right? So probably for tomorrow, I'm going to make you practice in the class how you're going to write on the analysis. So in the later classes, we can actually come and focus on this. Let me just check. Let me just check. Okay. So that is it for today. Thank you so much. I hope you did understand. Right now, I'm not asking because you're sitting right in front of me. Like some of the students are still in front of me.